Chapter 1 question: how have recent historical events affected the course of research in organizational psychology? Give an example of an event and the resulting outcome. So there are a lot of different events that have happened in the recent years that have affected the course of research in organizational psychology. One of the biggest things that comes to my mind is the COVID-19 shutdown in March of 2020. This event put many people, including most of us, out of work unless we were essential, which I do hair, so I'm not essential. I was out of work for 3 months, and it required us to stay home and mostly stay away from everybody else. This may not be something that everybody agrees on, but it is something that everybody in the world experienced. Some countries are still dealing with certain protocols, making traveling, entry, other aspects difficult in their home countries. Like I said, we may not all agree on the topic. It can be said that the United States is lucky to have a choice in whether or not we have to have the vaccine. It's not mandated. I know some states, state governments have done so. But some countries are still having to wear masks all the time. They can't leave their houses. There's still a whole lot of quarantine hanging around in other countries. The shift in organizational research went from being very involved in the workforce to working from home, and how that whole thing worked, because it was a whole ordeal for a lot of different organizations and companies, requiring their employees to work from home. And, now everybody going back to work is figuring out how to find a work-life balance, how individuals are working to get their lives back in order, and it opens a whole lot of channels for research. Original research that prior to COVID was a thing, and now getting back to that normalcy, finding that normalcy. Chapter 3, describe the socialization process for graduate students in your program. Is the program successful in socializing newcomers and creating job embeddedness? So this question I actually kind of struggled a little bit, because I wasn't really sure how to answer if we were looking for a theoretical example, or if we were talking about, Liberty University as a whole. So I'm just going to kind of answer both, because I'm not really sure. So as far as the socialization process goes in the workforce, most companies have a master's program in place. For example, Timken Steel, they're based out of Houston, Texas. They have a incredible master's program. So what they do is they go into the universities and they're looking for engineers, they're looking for architects, they're looking for, just about anybody, HR people, anything in relation to that particular company that are studying their master's. They're looking for those individuals who will come on board and be an asset to the company. So what they do is they provide a program that the individuals can intern through. It's a paid internship through the company, and they can complete the course of their internship while working on their master's degree, and the company actually helps pay for their master's degree. Now, with that being said, some people don't finish it out. They're not cut out for it. That's fine. It happens. But some are, and those who are go to finish their program and set an example for those to come when they bring on, the next people that are coming into the master's program with that particular company. Socializing the newcomers is a big deal. They take that into consideration also. In doing this program, it does open doors, windows, all of those things to their future, to more opportunities to room for growth, and all of those sorts of things. Now, from a personal perspective, in regards to Liberty University, my whole family has gone to school at Liberty, so I'm very familiar with the process, the bachelor's, the master's, and the doctoral. I will say, in my own experiences doing the bachelor's degree and the master's degree, I don't personally feel that Liberty pushes to make those connections. I know they have a few different cohorts that are like that, but I feel like on a doctoral level, they give you more opportunities to make acquaintance and to create those relationships with the different people, to push into the workforce and have a whole army behind you of colleagues and people that are familiar with different sorts of aspects of the workforce. I do think that the program is great. I think it's absolutely great for being a remote program, and being an online program. And I'm sure on campus there are more opportunities to meet up and create those relationships with people, and to get through the socialization process. But in terms of the online students, I feel that there should be other ways to do so. I know LinkedIn is a thing. Most people do use that, but just so that the students have an opportunity to build relationships with not only professors but other students, who are maybe studying something similar but not exactly the same, and having those people in your pocket and going into the workforce and having those relationships can really open doors, and provide opportunity in the future. Be available to answer questions, or it could be very beneficial to have that aspect. Chapter 4: How can an organization reduce or prevent work-family conflict? So work-life balance is something that is widely discussed, and for a good reason. I think all of us as individuals have struggled at some point with a work-life balance. It is not something that's easy to do. You're either really good at it or you just try to be really good at it and wing it most of the time. I wing it most of the time, but I make it work. It works for me. So the post-COVID workforce is something that affected all of us for sure, as I said before. The job demand increase, with that, people are finding it more difficult to keep up with family needs. According to the American Sociological Review, a study conducted by the University of Minnesota, 70% of individuals working right now are struggling to find a balance in their personal lives and their careers. So a few things that companies can do to create a healthier work environment and increase worker performance. There's a few that can help, actually. The first is the schedule flexibility. So most individuals can feel the pressures of needing to be in multiple places at one time. I feel like we've all been there. It's part of our daily lives. But it is important to figure out a way to cope with that and to make everything work, to find that balance. Being in multiple places at one time is impossible. So the schedule flexibility can be very helpful in making those things happen. A flexible work schedule can alleviate the stressors, by giving individuals the idea that they do indeed control their schedule, which makes them feel like they're having more time with their families. Another example is that companies could provide adequate support. This meaning that the leadership provides an example. They work by example. They set the whole example in its entirety. So this means that the leadership has to have a positive atmosphere. They have to be in a great mood. They have to set the example for the employees. Doing this can reduce the effects of the negative attitude an individual can take home. So, like, if you go to work and your boss is just raging and just in an awful mood, it sets the mood for the whole office. It affects everybody's day. Everybody's walking on eggshells, and then you likely take that stress home, and then your family ends up walking on eggshells because you're reacting the way that your boss was earlier that day, because that's what you're around all day. It happens, but it is helpful when the managers can set a balanced example, and showing that they can balance work and home and keep their lives separate as much as they need to in order to make a positive work environment, and that keeps employees happy, that doesn't keep them stressed out all the time. With work comes stress. That is just part of being in working America, no matter what part of it you're in. That's just part of it. But showing the balance to other employees from a management standpoint can really set an example for others figuring out how to find and maintain their balance. Another way that companies can assist their employees is proper training. And that'll help them find a balance as well. If you're properly trained in a company for the things that are going to come, for the situations that are going to come in your position, you're less likely to be super stressed out about it because you were trained for it, you know how to handle it, you know what to do, and that just makes it a lot less stressful when it comes down to presenting a resolution for that problem. Another thing is the company's culture. They can have positive effects on a work-life balance because it's creating and working in a positive environment. This can remove the pressure and stressors of the job as a whole. A collaborative, team-building, uplifting environment can also really reduce stress, which in turn can make it easier to leave work at work and focus on one's family when they get home. There are many ways that work-life balance can be avoided. These are just a few examples of what different companies and organizations could do in order to alleviate stress and help employees find that balance way easier. Chapter 5, question. Imagine you have been asked to develop a performance assessment program for employee development. Which techniques could you use to adequately evaluate employee performance as comprehensively as possible? Think of Murphy's List. So Murphy's List is a 1994 model of job performance according to the Enroll Extra role. In creating a performance assessment program for employee development, it would be my idea to keep things simple and to the point. I have done this in the past with the company that I worked for. I can't say their name. But I have done this in a management position, and it has worked the best. It allows the employee to see where they can improve without making them feel like what they're doing already isn't enough. When you work for a corporate company or a franchise or basically anything that has a home office that you have to report back to, they're going to be all about numbers. How the store's doing, customer feedback, all of those different things. And when it comes to doing a job a certain way and having that standard, it is important to, do these types of evaluations and let the individual know, hey, you're doing super great, but there is room for improvement in this area. So what that would look like, it's kind of like a checkoff sheet. The top section has the employee's name, all their information, name, job title, review date, etc., those kinds of things. The bottom section is where the questions are. These questions would be graded on a scale, like exceeds expectations, meets expectations, does not meet expectations, not applicable. Also leaving room at the bottom for the comments from the supervisor on how that supervisor is going to help this employee achieve the things that need to be achieved. How are we going to go about it? Kind of make a game plan on how we're going to improve the things that need to be improved. But also, rewarding the individual for, a pat on the back. You're doing great. Keep doing what you're doing, but let's improve in these areas and make it better, more beneficial. So a few of the questions that would kind of be in sections, I feel. That's how the one I made was. The bottom section would be the performance factors. So the first section would be dependability and cooperation. This is this employee trustworthy? Is this employee punctual? reliable, responsible, able to work well with other employees and supervisors. The next one would be the quality of work. Is this employee accurate in their work, thorough, and acceptable? Are they eager to work? Are they eager to improve? How do they maintain their time and resources? The next one would be work performance. Is this employee able to do a large amount of work at an above average quality? So this is a big one. And it kind of sounds cliche, like I want you to do all of this work above average in a very short amount of time. But in reality, that is one of the biggest things that companies do expect when you go into the workforce. You've been properly trained, you went to school, you've done all of these steps and things, and you need to be able to perform and spit things out very quickly in a professional manner that makes it able to be addressed across the board if necessary. And then, how do they perform under pressure? Professionalism is the next one. Does the individual dress for their position? Are they poised? Do they show self-control in heated situations? What kind of decisions do they make? So this is a big one as well. There can be work drama sometimes. I think that happens in a lot of places. Somebody says something that upsets someone and it's not handled the proper way. It is important to know that in a corporate environment, you do have to go through the proper channels. It is better to notify your human resources department and, go ahead and let them handle it rather than you approach it and heat the situation up more, and then you end up fighting with a coworker, and then that just makes work uncomfortable. It creates a hostile work environment and all of those things. So maintaining professionalism is a huge deal. And then the next one is the attitude towards work. Are they courteous? Are they positive? Are they a team player? Are they willing to work on difficult tasks? Are they able to work on a disagreeable task? So like jobs that they, or things that, not necessarily jobs, but things that they don't necessarily want to do. Are they able to just suck it up and go ahead and do them, or do they give you a bunch of backlash in doing that just because they disagree with it? So these are the things that I would use in my performance assessment program. Like I said, it's a kind of a sandwich type thing, like you're doing really great with these things. Here's the things you're not doing great with, but you're still doing great in these other things. So here's how we're going to improve the things that you're not doing great at. And, we as in the manager and the employee together to create that teamwork feeling and to, bring the team closer together. Chapter 6 question. What are some possible common organizational constraints, and how could they lead to counterproductive behaviors? There are many different things that could be common organizational constraints. There's a few that come to mind, and they can eventually turn into counterproductive work behaviors. The few that I thought of was inadequate training, not the proper training on the employee that's in that position, lack of supplies and equipment, lack of information, lack of organizational procedures and expectations, and a lack of management to take on a supervisory role to ensure that all work tasks are completed and done correctly. Our textbook explains, the Jackson Britt text explains, the counterproductive work behaviors are defined as volitional acts that harm or are intended to harm organizations or people in the organizations. The text also explains that sometimes, no matter what, there are bad apples. No matter how hard you train, no matter what you do, what you give them to utilize, some people just, it don't work, it don't click, it doesn't work out. It's not something that's really their fault. Some people are just wired that way. And those who are going to engage in counterproductive behaviors, that just because that's what they want to do. And it's not necessarily management's fault. It's not really anybody's fault. It's just how it is. There are certain personality traits that can pinpoint those bad apples, and then those that are not. Conscientiousness, trait, anger, self-control, and narcissism. In the text, Digman explains that conscientiousness is the reliability and regard for others trait. So this means that this is me noticing that you're a human being and you feel a certain way about these things. I'm conscious of how you feel, and it's something that most of the not so bad apples possess this trait. Let's see. Spielberger and Seidemann explain that trait anger represents the differences in people's general propensity to experience anger at an emotional level and their propensity to display anger as a response. So this kind of means that it's your reaction to anger. So you're feeling emotional, you're feeling angry about it. So how are you going to react about it? Are you going to show that you're angry? Are you going to flip the table over and throw a fit? Or are you going to sit back and hold that anger and handle the situation appropriately? That is one of the traits that both a bad apple and a good apple can hold in terms of employees. I don't think I should be calling them apples, but whatever. So self-control is the next one. That one's kind of self-explanatory. We all know what self-control is, what it means. But technically the definition comes from criminology. So self-control is something that they talk about in criminology because most of the time it is not something that people who are going to commit crime have. It's not something that maybe they have it in other aspects, but when they get that urge to rob the bank, or they get that urge to steal the neighbor's mail, or worse, go out and plan something that ends up on true crime that we're all watching, like, that's not necessarily something that they have. They may have it in other aspects of that life, but they cannot resist that urge. That's why it's talked about so much in criminology. And the last one is narcissism. Most people are familiar with this, but according to Raskin and Hall, narcissism is a subclinical personality trait characterized by a belief that one is superior to others and as a result deserves special treatment. This is something that, like I said, most people have experienced a narcissist through their lifetime. They're usually not super pleasant people, and you can pretty much sniff them out as soon as they walk in the room. But the first time they open their mouth. That's my opinion in my experiences with those types of people. That's definitely a bad apple trait. But yeah, so those are the personality traits that can kind of pin the good apples from the bad apples and vice versa. Let's see. So most cases of counterproductive behavior can be situation-based and or person-based. It just kind of depends on what's happening or who the person is. The traits that I earlier discussed are person-based: the narcissism, the trait anger, conscientiousness, and self-control. Those are all person-based. And the most common situation-based causes of counterproductive behaviors are stress and injustice. Those kind of speak for themselves. The constraints that I mentioned can cause counterproductive behaviors. They provide an opportunity for the employee to lose focus on the task and to give them the opportunity to have an excuse for their unprofessional behaviors. I mean, somebody's not just going to flat out be like, I couldn't do it because I'm a narcissist, or I didn't do it because I don't deserve to do that. But along those lines, those types of traits and behaviors can allow an individual to come up with excuses for their unprofessional behaviors.